Maya's life on the ranch had transformed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. It had been several months since she had left her old life behind, and each day felt like a new beginning. The ranch had become more than just a place to escape. It had become her home, her sanctuary. She had found a sense of belonging, something she had never felt in the village or within her in-laws' home. The daily tasks had become second nature. Whether it was feeding the animals, tending to the garden, or simply maintaining the cabin, Maya had grown into her role, learning and adapting with each new day. The rancher had been there every step of the way, teaching her, offering advice, but always respecting her ability to make her own decisions. Slowly, she realized that the strength she had been searching for had always been inside of her. She had simply needed the space and the time to uncover it. But even as Maya flourished in her new life, the shadow of her past lingered. She knew that it wasn't over, that at some point she would have to face her in-laws again. She couldn't keep running forever. The past had a way of creeping into the present, reminding her of the things she had tried to leave behind. One afternoon, after a long day of work, the rancher sat down beside Maya on the porch as the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the landscape in hues of gold and pink. He had a serious look on his face, and Maya immediately sensed that something was on his mind. "Maya," he said quietly, "I heard something today. Your in-laws are asking about you. They've been telling people that you ran away and abandoned your responsibilities. They want you to come back." Maya's heart sank. She hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Her mind flashed back to the day she had left, the feeling of shame and humiliation that had clung to her. She had never fully understood why her in-laws had treated her the way they did, but it didn't matter now. What mattered was that they wanted her back. "Do you think I should go back?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with uncertainty. The rancher didn't hesitate. "That's a decision only you can make. But let me remind you of something. You're not the same person who left. You've changed. You've found your strength. And no one should make you feel like you're less than that." Maya took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. She knew that returning to the village would not be easy. Her in-laws would never accept her decision to leave. They would see it as rebellion, as an act of defiance. But in the quiet of the ranch, she had rediscovered her worth. She had reclaimed her life, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was living for herself, not for anyone else. "I don't know what to do," Maya confessed. "I'm scared. What if they make me feel like I've failed again?" The rancher placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her a reassuring smile. "You haven't failed, Maya. You've found your voice. You've taken control of your life. If they try to make you feel small, don't let them. Stand tall. You're stronger than they think." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of his words in her chest. The fear still lingered, but something inside of her was shifting. She had found peace on the ranch, but she also knew that she couldn't let her past define her forever. She would have to confront it, and when she did, she had to be strong. She had to stand up for herself. The next morning, Maya decided that she would go back to the village, not to apologize or to beg for forgiveness, but to reclaim her dignity. She wasn't sure what would happen, but she knew she couldn't let fear hold her back anymore. She had come so far, and she was no longer the frightened, submissive woman who had left her in-laws' home months ago. Before she left, the rancher gave her a small bundle. Inside were some herbs from the garden and a few simple tools. "Take these with you," he said. "They'll remind you of the strength you found here." Maya thanked him, feeling a surge of gratitude for everything he had done for her. He had given her more than just a roof over her head. He had given her a chance to rebuild her life. And now it was time to stand on her own 2 feet. The journey back to the village was long and quiet. Maya rode alone, the wind carrying her thoughts as she traveled. She thought about the day she had left, how broken and ashamed she had felt, how desperate she had been to escape. How she was returning as someone different. She was no longer the woman who had been controlled by her in-laws' expectations. She was a woman who had learned to live for herself, to embrace her worth, and to stand firm in the face of adversity. When she reached the village, Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. The streets were as she remembered, narrow, busy, and filled with people who all seemed to know each other's business. As she made her way toward her in-laws' home, she could feel the weight of their judgmental stares even before she saw them. She had always been under their watchful eyes, but now it felt different. Now she was prepared to face them. Her in-laws were sitting outside when she arrived. They looked up as she approached, their expressions cold and unreadable. For a moment there was silence. Then her father-in-law spoke, his voice laced with disapproval. "So you've come back," he said. "Have you finally realized the mistake you made? Do you think we'll just forget what you did?" Maya stood tall, her heart steady. She didn't feel the fear she had once felt in their presence. She had worked too hard to let their words break her again. "I didn't make a mistake," she said firmly, her voice clear and unwavering. "I left because I needed to find myself. I needed to understand who I am, not who you wanted me to be. I've learned a lot since I left, and I'm not the same woman I was when I walked away." Her mother-in-law scowled, but Maya didn't flinch. "You think you can just leave and come back as if nothing happened? You think we'll accept you after everything you've done?" Maya took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for your acceptance. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm here because I want to make peace with my past. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let you treat me like I'm not good enough. I've found my strength, and I'm not going to let anyone take it from me." There was a long silence. Maya felt the weight of their eyes on her, but she stood her ground. Slowly, her in-laws fell silent, and the tension in the air seemed to ease, if only slightly. They didn't say anything more, but Maya knew that this moment was significant. She had spoken her truth, and she had reclaimed her dignity. As she turned to leave, Maya felt a sense of calm wash over her. She didn't need their approval anymore. She had found her own way. The journey ahead would still be difficult, but she was no longer afraid. She was stronger than she had ever been before, and no matter what came next, she was ready to face it with courage. The days that followed Maya's arrival at the ranch were filled with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time. At first, she spent her time getting to know her new surroundings, walking through the garden and enjoying the quiet that surrounded her. It was a peaceful place with the soft murmur of the nearby river and the gentle rustling of the trees in the breeze. The rancher had been kind enough to give her space when she needed it, but he also encouraged her to start helping out with the daily tasks around the cabin and the land. The work wasn't easy, but it was honest. The rancher had a simple routine. He worked early in the morning, taking care of the animals and tending to the crops, and then in the late afternoon, he would spend some time fixing tools or doing small repairs around the cabin. At first, Maya felt a little out of place. She had never worked on a ranch before, and she wasn't sure how to handle the animals or how to tend the garden. But the rancher was patient with her, teaching her the basics and showing her how to do things at a slow, steady pace. One morning, after a warm breakfast, the rancher suggested they go out to the fields together. "I need help with the hay," he said, handing her a pair of gloves. "It's a simple task, but it's one that needs to be done right." Maya felt a bit nervous. She had never worked on a farm before, and she wasn't sure what to expect. The rancher seemed to sense her hesitation. "Don't worry," he said with a reassuring smile. "I'll show you how to do it, and we'll take it slow. There's no rush here." They walked to the far side of the property where fields of tall grass were swaying gently in the wind. Maya marveled at the vastness of the land, the way it seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, with the mountains in the distance casting long shadows over the fields. It was different from the village, different from the crowded streets and the narrow, confined spaces where she had spent most of her life. Here everything felt open and free. As they began working, the rancher showed her how to gather the hay and stack it neatly in piles. It wasn't hard, but it was tiring. The sun was high in the sky now, and Maya could feel the sweat forming on her brow as she worked. But there was something satisfying about the work. Each bundle of hay she gathered felt like an accomplishment. It was simple, but it was real. The more she worked, the more she began to appreciate the peace of the ranch, the rhythm of the day, and the sense of purpose that came with each task. By midday, they had finished the haying, and the rancher suggested they take a break by the river. They sat down on a large rock, the cool water flowing past them, creating a peaceful, calming sound. The rancher pulled out a small piece of bread and cheese, and they shared a simple lunch together, eating quietly as the sun shone down on them. "I never imagined this life," Maya said after a while, her voice thoughtful. "I thought I would always be stuck in the village, trapped in the expectations of my family. I never knew there was a life like this where I could just—" The rancher nodded, his expression kind. "Life here is different. It's not about meeting expectations or living up to others' standards. It's about finding peace within yourself and working hard for what you have. You're doing great, Maya, don't forget that. Maya smiled, grateful for his words. It was the first time in a long time that she had felt truly seen. No judgment, no pressure, just kindness and encouragement. She realized that this place wasn't just a physical escape from her past. It was an emotional one as well. Slowly, she began to open up more, letting herself embrace the calm of the ranch and the kindness of the rancher. Over the next few weeks, Maya became more involved in the ranch's daily routines. She helped with feeding the animals, cows, chickens, and horses, and learned how to gather eggs from the chicken coop. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She even began to enjoy it. The routine of caring for the animals, watering the garden, and making sure everything was in order brought a sense of fulfillment that she had never experienced before. In the evenings, the rancher would sometimes sit by the fire, telling her stories of his own life. He spoke of growing up on the ranch, learning from his parents, and how he had always loved the peace that came with living close to nature. It's not always easy, he would say, but it's a life I've chosen, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Maya would listen intently, fascinated by his stories. He didn't seem to have the same burden of expectations that she had carried for so long. He had chosen this life, and in many ways it was the life he had made for himself. The more she listened, the more Maya began to wonder if she could one day build something for herself. Too, a life where she could live without fear, without the constant need to please others. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the rancher turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "You know, Maya," he said softly, "you don't have to stay here forever, but I want you to understand that you have options now. You can stay here and work on the ranch, or you can go back to the village if you feel it's the right thing for you. The choice is yours." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had never imagined being able to make such a decision for herself. Before, it had always been about what others wanted, what her in-laws expected, what society demanded. Now the choice was hers. She could stay, build a new life, or leave and return to the familiar. Even if it was painful, she thought about her old life, how stifling it had been, how every move she made was scrutinized, how she was never allowed to just be herself. It hadn't been a life she had chosen, and now, sitting here, surrounded by the peace of the ranch, Maya realized that she had the power to shape her future. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. "I think I'm ready to stay," Maya said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "This is the life I want. I want to build something here for myself. I want to be part of this." The rancher smiled warmly, his eyes filled with approval. "I'm glad to hear that, Maya. You've got what it takes. Just remember, it's all about taking things one step at a time, and you're already on the right path." Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. The journey wasn't going to be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but she was no longer afraid. She had found a new sense of purpose on the ranch, and she knew that no matter what, she was going to make it. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the sounds of the wind outside and the soft rustling of the trees, Maya closed her eyes with a sense of contentment. This was her new beginning, and it was just the start of a life she had always dreamed of, a life where she was free to be herself, to work hard, and to build something for her future. She had found her place here, and she was determined to make it her own. The air was cool as Maya sat behind the rancher, holding on to him for support as the horse carried them down the winding path that led away from the village. Each mile seemed to distance her not only from her home but from the life she had known, one that had once seemed so certain, yet had become so suffocating. She couldn't help but glance back every now and then, watching as the farmstead and the village slowly disappeared behind a veil of trees and hills. It was as if her past was slipping away, becoming just a memory, one she wasn't sure how to process yet. Maya had never thought she would be the type of person to run away from her problems. In fact, she had always tried to do the opposite. She had stayed, tried to fight, tried to make things right. But now, in the quiet moments of the ride, as the world around her stretched out into unfamiliar territory, she realized how much she had been carrying on her shoulders for so long. And yet it was almost as if the moment she made the decision to leave had allowed her to finally breathe. The rancher kept a steady pace, allowing the horse to move at a comfortable speed. His presence was a constant reassurance, as though he were an anchor in the middle of a storm. Maya felt a strange sense of calm from him. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't speaking unnecessarily. and he wasn't asking her to explain everything. He just knew that sometimes silence was the most healing thing a person could offer. As the journey continued, Maya began to realize just how much she had been disconnected from the world around her. The simple beauty of the open fields, the towering trees, and the endless sky above them filled her with a sense of awe. She hadn't seen this kind of landscape in so long. The village, while beautiful in its own way, had felt so enclosed. She had never had the chance to truly appreciate the vastness of the world outside of the small bubble she had been trapped in, but there was a strange feeling in the pit of her stomach too, a mix of excitement and fear. What was ahead? What kind of life could she have beyond the village? Her mind raced with 100 questions, and for a brief moment she felt doubt creeping in. Had she made the right choice? Would she be able to build a new life for herself? Or would the shadows of her past follow her wherever she went? As if reading her thoughts, the rancher turned slightly in the saddle, his voice breaking through the silence. "It's okay to be scared," he said softly. "Starting over is never easy, but you've already taken the hardest step. The rest will come with time." Maya gave a small nod, grateful for his words. She wasn't sure what kind of life she would build, but the idea of having the chance to try, without the pressure, without the expectations, filled her with a glimmer of hope. Hours passed as they rode through fields and forests, and the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows over the landscape. The evening air turned cool, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the air. Maya began to notice how much she had missed the simple sounds of nature. The rustle of the trees, the chirping of distant birds, the soft clopping of the horses' hooves on the dirt path. It was a kind of peace she had never known, and it soothed her restless mind. Eventually, the rancher led them off the main road, onto a smaller, more secluded path. The trees here grew closer together, their thick branches intertwining above them, creating a canopy of green. The world around them felt even more removed from the village now, like they were entering another world entirely. The sense of isolation felt different here. It wasn't the kind of isolation that suffocated, but the kind that gave Maya space to breathe, to think, and to simply be. After what felt like hours, they finally arrived at a small, modest cabin tucked away in the woods. It was nothing like the grand house she had imagined when she first thought of escaping. No marble floors, no luxurious furnishings. But there was a warmth to it, a welcoming simplicity that immediately made Maya feel at ease. The rancher dismounted and offered her his hand to help her down from the horse. "Here we are," he said, a slight smile on his face. "This is where you'll stay for a while. It's not much, but it's peaceful and it's safe. No one will come looking for you here." Maya looked around at the cabin and the surrounding land. It was small, but there was something beautiful about it. The scent of pine trees filled the air, and the distant sound of a river rushing nearby created a gentle rhythm that calmed her restless mind. This place was nothing like the home she had left behind, but it felt like a fresh start. The rancher showed her inside, where a small fire crackled in the stone hearth. The cabin was simply furnished with a sturdy wooden table and chairs, a small kitchen area, and a cozy-looking bed by the window. It wasn't extravagant, but it was everything Maya needed. A safe, quiet place to rest, to think, and to heal. As she stepped inside, the rancher disappeared into another room, leaving her to settle in. Maya took a deep breath, looking around at the cabin and realizing how different everything felt now. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of freedom, the kind of freedom she had never been allowed before. She walked over to the window, gazing out at the view. The trees stood tall and proud, their leaves shimmering in the fading sunlight. She could hear the soft sound of the river in the distance, its gentle current like a soothing lullaby. It was strange, but in this moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The rancher returned soon after, carrying a basket of food. "I wasn't sure what you might want to eat, so I just brought some bread and cheese," he said. "There's a spring nearby where we can get fresh water. You'll find everything you need here." Maya smiled faintly, her heart lifting with the small gesture. He had thought of everything, things she had never had to think about back in the village. The simple kindness he showed her made her realize how much she had taken for granted. She had always been so focused on surviving, on meeting expectations, that she had forgotten how to truly live. After a simple meal, the rancher showed her the small garden outside, where herbs and vegetables were growing. He explained that he spent most of his days working on the land, growing food, tending to animals, and taking care of the place. "It's hard work," he said, "but it's honest work. It keeps me busy and it keeps me grounded." Maya couldn't help but admire his sense of peace. There was no pressure here, no judgment, no expectations. He had a simple, hard-working life, and it seemed to suit him just fine. The more she listened to him talk about his life, the more Maya realized that maybe this was what she had needed all along: freedom, space, and the ability to find her own path. That night, as Maya lay in bed, the soft sound of crickets and the wind rustling the leaves outside, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in years. She was far from home, far from everything she had known, but she had taken the first step toward something new, something she could call her own. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to sleep peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would be the start of something better. Maya sat in the cold, dimly lit room, staring at her reflection in the window. Her head, once full of thick dark hair, was now bare. The sensation of the chilly breeze against her scalp only reminded her of the raw pain she felt. She had never imagined a day like this would come. How could her own family, the people who were supposed to love and care for her, treat her this way? Her heart felt heavy, as though it had been weighed down by 1,000 stones. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock at the door. It was soft at first, barely audible over the weight of her sadness, but then it came again, louder this time, almost as if whoever was on the other side was hesitant, unsure. Maya didn't want to face anyone. She couldn't bear to see the looks of pity or judgment that she knew she would receive. The door creaked open slowly, and she didn't even look up. But then she heard a voice. A calm, steady voice, unlike the harsh tones she was used to from her in-laws. "Maya?" the voice asked gently. Maya raised her head, surprised by the kindness in the voice. She had not expected anyone to speak to her like that after what had happened. She hadn't even realized that someone had entered the house, but there stood a man, tall, with a broad build and weathered features. He wore a simple shirt, faded from working under the sun, and boots that had clearly been through a lot. He had an aura about him, one of quiet strength, as though he carried burdens but also had the wisdom to handle them with grace. The man was a rancher from a nearby farm, someone Maya had seen occasionally in the village but didn't know well. He had a reputation of being a hard worker, a man who kept to himself and didn't often engage in the gossip or drama of the village. People admired him for his sense of integrity, his straightforwardness, and his reputation for helping others without expecting anything in return. Maya had never expected him to be the one to come to her aid. But here he was. He took a few steps into the room, looking at her with a mixture of concern and understanding. His eyes softened when he saw her, and Maya noticed something in his gaze. It wasn't pity as she had expected, but empathy. He seemed to understand somehow what she was going through. "You don't have to speak," he said, his voice kind but firm. "I heard about what happened. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." Maya opened her mouth to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She was too overwhelmed by emotion to speak. She could feel the sting of tears in her eyes again, but she didn't want to cry in front of him. She didn't want to show weakness. But the rancher wasn't looking at her like someone who was there to judge her. He wasn't there to tell her what to do or to lecture her about how things should be. Instead, he simply waited, giving her the space she needed. After a moment, Maya finally found her voice. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The rancher smiled slightly as if he had been expecting the question. "I heard what your in-laws did," he replied. "I didn't believe it at first, but I couldn't ignore it. A woman shouldn't have to go through that, no one should." Maya was taken aback. She hadn't realized how much word had spread. In a small village, news traveled fast, and now everyone knew. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but the rancher's calm demeanor made her feel safer somehow. He wasn't here to spread rumors or make things worse. He was here because he genuinely cared. "You don't deserve this," the rancher continued, his voice low but steady. "And you don't have to stay here feeling trapped and alone." Maya felt a flutter of hope inside her chest. Could it really be that simple? Could someone like him actually help her? Her in-laws had made her feel like there was no escape, no way out of the suffocating life they had imposed on her. But here, in this moment, the rancher seemed to offer something different. He offered a chance, an opportunity to break free, to leave all of this behind. He took a step closer and spoke again, his words like a lifeline. "I can take you somewhere safe. You don't have to stay here with them. You can come with me. Maya's heart raced. The idea of leaving was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had never imagined herself running away from her family. But after what had happened, staying felt impossible. She was torn between the familiar, even if it was painful, and the unknown, which promised freedom but also uncertainty. The rancher seemed to sense her hesitation. I know it's hard, he said softly, but I promise there's a better life waiting for you. You don't have to live under their control anymore. Maya looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She had spent so many years trying to please her in-laws, trying to prove herself worthy of their love and respect. But every effort had been met with more criticism, more demands. She had been made to feel small, invisible. Now she felt as though she were standing at a crossroads. If she stayed, she would continue to live in the shadow of their expectations. But if she left, she could start over. She could be free. The rancher watched her quietly, giving her time to think. He didn't rush her or push her to make a decision. He just waited, offering her his presence, his understanding. It was in that silence that Maya found the strength to make her choice. I'll go, she said, her voice barely a whisper, but it was enough. It was a decision she had never imagined making, but in her heart she knew it was the right one. The rancher nodded, his face softening with approval. Good, let's go then. Without another word, he helped her gather a few belongings. Maya didn't have much to take, just the few clothes she had left and a small bundle of essentials. She didn't need anything else. The rest of her life, her past would stay behind. She was ready to step into a new world, one where she could be herself, free from the chains that had bound her. As they walked out of the house together, Maya couldn't help but glance back at the place she had once called home. The farmhouse seemed cold and distant now, a symbol of everything she had endured. But with every step she took away from it, she felt lighter, as though the weight of her past was slowly lifting. The rancher led her to his horse, a strong, sturdy animal that seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. Maya climbed onto the horse behind him, and they set off toward the open road. As the village faded into the distance, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. She was leaving behind the life that had tried to break her, and she was riding toward something new, something hopeful. For the first time in a long while, Maya allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. There was no telling what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: it would be better than what she had left behind, and with that, she rode off into the unknown, trusting the rancher to guide her toward a new beginning. Maya had always felt the weight of tradition on her shoulders. Growing up in a small rural village, she was taught to respect family customs even when they seemed unfair or old-fashioned. Her family, though not wealthy, had always managed to make do, living simply but with a sense of pride that came from generations of hard work. They had a farm which they worked from sunrise to sunset, and in a place where everyone knew each other. Reputation and respect were more valuable than anything money could buy. Maya's in-laws, on the other hand, had a different set of beliefs, rooted in an old tradition passed down through generations. They were known for being strict, unyielding in their views of how women should behave and how they should look. Maya had always known that her life would not be the same once she married into their family. They expected perfection in everything she did, from the way she spoke to the way she dressed, and most importantly, how she behaved. To them, the woman's role was clear: to serve the family, maintain the household, and uphold the values of tradition, even if it meant sacrificing her own desires or sense of self. For months after the wedding, Maya tried her best to meet her in-laws' expectations, even when it felt like she was losing herself in the process. She worked hard to keep the house tidy, cooked meals that suited everyone's tastes, and always made sure to show respect to her husband's family. But no matter how hard she tried, it seemed like her efforts were never enough. There was always something wrong. She was too quiet or too talkative, too soft-spoken or not humble enough. It seemed like every day was a new challenge, a new test of her worth in their eyes. But nothing prepared her for what was about to happen. One cold winter morning, Maya was preparing breakfast in the kitchen when her mother-in-law came in with a grim look on her face. Without even greeting her, she asked Maya to come with her. "There's something important you need to learn today," her mother-in-law said, her voice stern and emotionless. Maya's heart sank. She had no idea what was coming, but the tone in her mother-in-law's voice sent a chill down her spine. They walked together to the living room, where Maya's father-in-law was sitting by the fireplace, a serious look on his face. His eyes seemed colder than usual, as if they had already made up their minds about something. As Maya entered the room, her breath caught in her throat. She could sense that something was terribly wrong. She had heard whispers among the other women in the village about an old tradition, something that was done to teach a woman her place, but she never thought it would happen to her. Maya tried to smile, hoping to break the tension in the room, but it was clear that her efforts were futile. Her in-laws were about to carry out something that they believed was necessary for her to learn humility. Without saying a word, her father-in-law stood up and reached for a pair of old worn scissors that sat on a nearby table. Maya's heart began to race as she looked at the scissors in confusion. Her mother-in-law spoke in a low, commanding voice. "It's time. This is a lesson you need to learn. Your appearance reflects your status in this family. We are not like other families who let their daughters-in-law wear their hair freely. This is a tradition that has been passed down for generations. It is time for you to respect it." Maya felt her stomach twist into knots. She had heard of this practice before. It was something women in the family did when they were too proud or too rebellious. It was meant to humble them, to show them that their beauty was nothing compared to the family's traditions. Her own mother had been forced to do this when she was married, but Maya had never thought that it would happen to her. She was different, she thought. She was strong. She had been doing her best to keep the peace in her marriage and to make her in-laws proud, but none of that seemed to matter now. Before she could say anything, her father-in-law grabbed a handful of her long, dark hair and began cutting. The scissors snipped through her hair as if it were nothing more than a piece of cloth. Each cut felt like a wound to her soul, and she couldn't stop the tears that began to flow down her cheeks. The physical pain wasn't as sharp as the emotional pain that overwhelmed her. In that moment, she felt small, insignificant, and powerless. Her mother-in-law watched with a look of satisfaction on her face. "You will learn humility now," she said, her voice cold. "No more fancy hairstyles. No more pretending you're better than anyone else. This is the way of our family." Maya couldn't speak. She wanted to fight, to scream, but the words wouldn't come. She felt as though she had lost something far greater than just her hair. She had lost her dignity, her sense of self-worth, and the little bit of hope she had been holding on to. When the shaving was finally over, Maya was left standing there, her head completely bare. The cold air seemed to bite at her scalp, but the humiliation she felt was far worse. Her eyes were red from crying, and her heart ached with a mixture of anger, sorrow, and confusion. Her in-laws stood there as if nothing had happened, as if this was just another normal day. They left her standing there in that room, abandoned and broken. Maya sat down in a chair, feeling completely defeated. The reality of what had just happened settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had been stripped of something more than just her hair. She had been stripped of her dignity, of her sense of identity. And now she had to live with the consequences. The village would talk, people would whisper behind her back. She could already hear the rumors spreading, how she had been put in her place and how she would never be the same again. But even in the midst of her grief, a small spark of something began to grow inside of her. It wasn't anger, though it certainly could have been. It wasn't hatred for her in-laws, although she felt betrayed. No, it was something else. It was a flicker of realization that she was worth more than this. She didn't deserve to be treated this way. She didn't deserve to be humiliated for no reason other than her in-laws' desire for control. And in that moment, something shifted within her. She couldn't change what had happened, but she could change the way she moved forward. As she sat there staring at her reflection in the window, Maya made a decision. She wouldn't let this define her. She wouldn't let the shame consume her. She would find a way to reclaim her life, to rebuild her sense of self. And though she didn't know how, she knew that this was just the beginning of her journey toward freedom.